All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the final session of this semester's Colloquium Series on Education Policy, sponsored by the Program on Education Policy and Governance. And we're very grateful that we've got both Paul Peterson and Marty West here representing PEPG's leadership. We've also got a few other stars in the audience, including Amy Gadara, former Secretary of Education of Virginia, Andy Rotherham of Bellwether. I could list off all the names of the impressive guests, but we're here today because our speaker is John Bailey, who is one of the leading experts on artificial intelligence in schools. And he's going to be talking about the jagged frontier of AI in education, uneven gains, real risks, and what comes next. Sounds like a bit of a roller coaster ride, so it's going to be entertaining, if nothing else. And since our topic today is AI, I thought that I would dispense with my normal sort of self-written introduction and let AI do it. So I asked Claude to frame the issue of AI in schools from the perspective of policymakers, and this is what we came back with. AI in K-12 education presents policymakers with a genuinely complex set of trade-offs. Equity is perhaps the most pressing challenge. Without deliberate intervention, AI tools risk widening the gap between well-resourced and under-resourced schools. Data privacy is another serious concern, as these systems collect vast amounts of sensitive information about minors. Compounding all of this is the sheer difficulty of regulating a technology that is evolving faster than policy cycles can keep up with, and whose real-world applications vary wildly in quality and effectiveness. What works brilliantly in one classroom context may be ineffective or even counterproductive in another. On the opportunity side, AI holds real promise for personalized learning and can help address teacher shortages by automating administrative burdens, freeing educators to focus on deeper engagement. The central challenge for policymakers is building frameworks flexible enough to adapt as the technology changes, while still providing clear data governance standards and ensuring that adoption is paired with equitable infrastructure. How does that sound?
I say it's a bunch of truisms.
Was it written by a machine or by a person?
By a machine. Well, yeah, that's right. It's going to be the Claude person who's in Wisconsin somewhere typing out these answers. Anyway, that's enough of the AI. The rest is all mine. By way of introduction, John Bailey wears several hats. He's a non-resident senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. He's also a fellow with Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. He's the founder and CEO of Vestigo Partners, among other things. In all of these roles, he helps companies, investors, philanthropies, and policymakers leverage emerging technologies to expand opportunity and human flourishing. And he served in multiple roles at the federal and state government level. Following John's presentation, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers and discussion. And I'll prioritize folks in the room, but we do have folks who are Zooming in online, so I'll try to work them into the conversation as time allows. If you are online watching on Zoom and you've got a question or a comment, please enter it into the chat and we'll try to bring it into the conversation. And as always, we'll be recording the proceedings and posting them online on the PEPG's website. So we are on the record. And with that, let me turn it over to John Bailey.
All right, great. Thank you, Claude, for that introduction. Great. And also, I seem to have picked up like a bad cough and respiratory thing. So like my voice is more gravelly and slightly more serious. But if I pass out, Andy is EMT trained, and so he can resuscitate me hopefully. But I might just need to get tea. Just quick to help me, because it's so hard to kind of come into rooms these days with like people, because everyone's had a different experience with AI. And that shapes a lot of thoughts and opinions and perspectives. So we're just going to do like a little poll, like how many people here have been using ChatGPT, say daily? Anyone switched to Claude, like maybe in the last couple months? More Claude, right? Have anyone used Claude Code? Oh, 2 Claude Codes. How have you used Claude Code?
Nothing serious, just to like make an app for, or like a website, just like a personal thing.
Nothing serious, just made an app. Yeah.
Web scraping.
Oh, web scraping. Yeah. Okay, great. That's super helpful to know. Has anyone used Gemini? Any of the Gemini tools? Do you know Banana Notebook LM? Oh, a couple notebook apps. Okay, that's great. Good. That is just helpful. What I want to do is like the temptation with like presentations like this is to just jump right into policy. And what I kind of want to do is try to help orient us and situate us to just like what's happening and where AI is emerging in terms of capabilities. And then that sets the table for what does it mean for education, for kids, for teachers. The reason I want to do that though is in part because like, I don't think I've ever seen a gap as wide between Silicon Valley and what they're building and talking about there, and also those of us in the education sector, and frankly, those of us in public policy. And that gap is just widening. A lot of that is around agentic AI. People heard about agents a little bit? Yeah, so we'll talk a lot about agents because that is what Silicon Valley is like just consumed with right now. And you're going to just see this week alone, there were like 4 agentic announcements from Anthropic, Google, to Google yesterday. Those are just going to keep increasing. Google has their big developer conference next month called Google I/O. And so all the companies like race to kind of announce things ahead of that and around that to kind of like help with the getting ahead of it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then honestly, it's just to help set up the conversation with all of you. We could go in any different directions, privacy or what it means. The Jagged Frontier, why this this title for this talk? And it comes, it's not original to me, it comes from a computer science researcher named Karparthi, who's just famous on Twitter. He's just like an amazing AI researcher. And Ethan Mollick made this famous too. He's a Wharton business school professor. But it captures this sort of uneven advances that I think a lot of us are like, well, how can AI be so good if it gets my bio wrong? Like 2 years ago, it was like AI couldn't do math. If you use any of the image generators, it's like, well, it's so terrible that 6 figures. And the thing is that this is a very jagged, uneven sort of way that this technology is evolving. And that jaggedness is probably the single most important issue for us to kind of understand in education right now. That's becoming superhuman and super intelligent in a number of areas. And it's still like a pretty dumb intern in another different areas too that needs a lot of micromanaging. And that's just something to kind of help understand the trajectory of this. There's like 3 areas that I think jaggedness kind of shows up for me. One is just in capabilities. And this is what models can do today is increasing exponentially, not incrementally. And so for a lot of people who are down on like, I don't think AI is going to be that transformative, their views largely have been kind of shaped around a chatbot around 2023, 2024. They kind of missed this whole era of reasoning models. Reasoning models think for a longer period of time before giving you an answer. And it's missing this agentic era where AI has access to tools and capabilities that do more than just sort of write a press release or write a blog post. Adoption, most Americans still have not used these tools. I think there was like a survey that came out today that maybe 25% of businesses have. I was reminded about this, that those of us who kind of spent a lot of time with the Frontier Labs and then go back out in our sectors, it's been very disorienting. I would say since Christmas. Like Christmas was a good example where half of my feeds were people setting up chatbots, personal chatbots and agents for themselves, debating whether or not we had reached AGI. I met a really powerful consultant in DC who was very dismissive because it was still getting math errors wrong. And then also most of my mom's friends had never used ChatGPT. And what just struck me is that that's 3 people living in really 3 different realities right now. And this adoption is just, that a gap is growing. In some reasons, it's also because like we just have barriers to adoption. And that's things like unions, systems, regulators, org policies that just sort of slow the adoption in it too. That's okay. It gives time for the organizations to think about like what it means, and we'll talk more about that. And then there's also impact, that just because you have capabilities doesn't mean it has necessarily impact. And we just know this from past waves of technology. There was a great, Thomas Sowell had a great quote like in the early 80s where you could see computers everywhere in the productivity indicators. It's sort of become this axiom in the tech sector. And it's very true here too, that just because you adopt AI doesn't necessarily mean you get immediate productivity boosts or it generates better outcomes. It's jagged. You're going to see some gains, you're going to see some losses. It's a lot of system and workflow redesigns that kind of need to have happen. So here's the part to help like orient, because I think where most people get dizzy is they're trying to track who's on top of the leaderboard. So like right now, everyone's like, oh, Claude is the better model to use. And they've moved off of ChatGPT or something. But everyone's kind of consumed with like, is this next model better or is it, worse than the other ones? What I find is Dario, who's the CEO of Anthropic, has this kind of framework that he published in 2 different essays that I think is helpful for us as leaders because it's a little bit out in the future. And what he is predicting, and what I want to show you for the rest of the presentation today, why I think he's right, is that by 2027, we're going to have AI that has a couple different capabilities. One, it's going to be much smarter than the AI you're using now. And by smarter, meaning Nobel Prize level equivalent knowledge across multiple domains, not just math, not just science, multiple domains. It's going to be multimodal, meaning it's going to not just generate text and see text, but it's going to see video, analyze audio, talk to you. It's going to be much more multimedia, multimodal. It's going to be agentic. We're going to talk a lot about agents, but agents also control tools. So think of everything that's on your desktop right now, the trackpad or the mice that you use. Think about all the software applications on it. Agents will increasingly move and use those tools on your behalf. It's actually has anyone done that? Claude Cowork on it? It's the creepiest thing because you're watching, like literally it'll fire up a web browser. It'll move around, it'll click things. For me right now, it's configuring a bunch of different databases. Claude Cowork, the first project I gave her, I said, clean up my desktop. And it said this is embarrassing, 536 files. And then it wrote this plan for how it would organize the files by subject, by type. Click to approve, did it in 30 seconds. And then I had it, there's a computer science bulletin board of archive that always names their studies like a number combination, so you never know what the number combination means. So I just had Claude Cowork rename the study to reflect the title of the study. And it just did all that using tools that are on my Mac desktop. So agentic, persistent. One of the ways that the Frontier Labs have figured out that you can get the models to do better things and be more accurate is give them more time. So right now, if you go to ChatGPT and you type in a question, you get something back pretty instantly. Maybe if you give it a hard question, you'll see it says thinking, and thinking can last like 3 minutes. If you click on deep research will trigger like a 20-minute or 40-minute thinking range. Where we're moving into, though, where AI will have hours, days, and sometimes months to kind of think, reflect, work on whatever task that you give it. Most of the agents that I'm running on my computer right now work behind the scenes when I'm on Zooms for 3 to 4 hours at a time. But that's a very different experience than just using ChatGPT. And then connected means a little bit less for us in education. Really big issues in business though, and that is like robotics, Waymos, if you've been in a Waymo, but just connecting into the physical manufacturing world. So why I think Dario's right, and what is so helpful about this is that it gives us like something to think about. That if that happens in 2027, 2028, 2029, you're following the trajectory, we're seeing that show up. So this is an example of a couple different benchmarks that we use to gauge how intelligent and how capable some of these systems are. And you see that it's doubling every 7 months. It actually, with the arrival of Opus 4.6, that's compressed to 4 months. So the way to think about this is AI is exponentially getting better every 4 months on some of these very advanced reasoning tasks. We're also seeing them get smarter than the average human on a number. This is a math benchmark, and then sort of a conglomeration of different benchmarks. And you can see that it went from no better than random guessing in October 24 to now it's the equivalent of an expert human, so a PhD level by 2025. And that line is just going up. What I love about the graph over on the right, you see that one sort of weird orange bar on the right-hand side? That's Meta. So Meta was very behind with their Llama models. They just came out with a new model 2 weeks ago, and it's now performing at the level of all the other sort of frontiers. But it just shows you, you're not paying attention to who's on first or who's on top. You're paying attention to this trajectory where it's just getting smarter over time. I'll show you, we'll cut this off a little bit, but this is an example of what Google showed last year of how their Project Astra, which is sort of a multimodal tutor of how it could work.
Can you help me out with question number 39 here?
Of course. Is this the problem?
Yes, I don't really understand what to do here.
No problem. Let's take this to the blackboard. The key concept here is optical isomerism.
Got it. But how can I tell if an isomer is optically active?
Optically active compounds require a chiral.
So I'll cut that off, but you get a sense that was like a demo. That's all in your pockets right now. You have Gemini. You can literally do that with the Gemini app in your pocket. But it also, what's been interesting to me is that I don't think we've seen a huge explosion of multimodal tutors in education. Like, I think it was interesting, like Google did this more for capabilities, but we're all sort of still stuck in a Conmigo world. It's like very text-based. But it's so different in terms of the way you talk to it, what it can see, the video understanding of it. When I first got video understanding for Gemini, I was like at a farmer's market. And when they said like you're in on the beta test, and so I could walk around the farmers market with Gemini, and it would look at all the ingredients at all the stalls, and I said, "What are some recipes we can make from it?" Came up with some recipes, and it walked me back to each of the stalls where the ingredients were. So it's a very different world when all of a sudden AI can see, hear, listen, speak, and engage with us. So agents, I think, though, are so important. Right a year ago, this was like science fiction. Right now, it's what all the companies are producing. And what's so different about this from a chatbot is that agents kind of work in a unique way. They can reason, so they'll think through a plan. They'll do a plan. They'll make a plan. They take action on your behalf. They do some reflection, and then they iterate time and time again until it executes and does the task for you. And what you're seeing agents popping up in sort of authoring tools, NVIDIA CEO in particular, I mean, you have to just like wrestle with this quote that in 10 years, we're going to have he's going to have 75,000 employees and 7.5 million agents. And I think that's like probably right. Like already I'm sort of seeing agents pop up and I'm using them in my life. Sometimes they're agents that are persistent. I use it every single day. And sometimes they're agents that are created by another agent for a split second to accomplish a task, and then it goes away. But agents are so different because they do things. They just don't give you an answer. They execute tasks for you. So I'll show you, this is an example of Manus. Manus had an agent. And what I'm going to do is ask Manus here to do an SEO audit of the American Enterprise Institute's website. What you're seeing, this took place over 40 minutes, but every time on the right-hand side you see a web browser come up, that's Manus controlling the web browser. It's clicking through 36 different type of tasks. And then at the end, it has to think through, well, how do I give this information back to John? And so it's going to build an interactive website that has the findings of it. But everything you're seeing outside of me giving it a single prompt is Manus thinking, reflecting, reasoning, and then doing. And then there's the website with the analysis on it. Now that took place over 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But again, it gives you a sense of like some of the ways this could work. So here's another example, and I knew Andy was going to be here. So Bellwether has this great report on productive struggle. So I'm just going to give, this is another type of agent. I'm going to say, build me an interactive tutor that cultivates productive struggle. That's all. It's a very bad prompt, but everything you're going to see here, running tasks in parallel, those are 3 or 4 different agents where it's going out, it has to go find Andy's report, has to understand it, has to do some supplemental research, and now it says, let me build this. And it's going to start building the app on the other side of it. So what you're seeing with the scaffolding from the full stack app is it literally doing the code on the sort of the back end. What looks to be like one agent is actually multiple agents in the background that are sort of working on this. So I'll skip through, and this is kind of what it built. So you say begin session. We'll say my name is John. We'll say middle school. I'm a visual learner, sports, and I like the Denver Broncos. Then we'll click on continue. Oh, I said Taylor Swift too. I don't think it did any Taylor Swift examples, but we're going to say mathematics. I think I say fractions on this. Oh, we do economics. I think I do chain weighted CPI. Does anyone know chain weighted CPI? No. It's not the economics class. So it's generating the first question. And then what you see, like what it came up with is like a zone of proximal development. It actually keeps track of if I'm randomly guessing or if I'm trying. If I try hard, it actually unlocks the hint. It made a ton of different assumptions, but it's a very Socratic tutor. And here's the thing, that was a terrible prompt. but in 20 minutes it built this. We wanted to make this a better tutor. You just go back and forth. It's almost like talking to a contractor. You would just say, okay, this is great for productive struggle. I want something that's aligned with the Massachusetts curriculum. I want something that's tied to this type of textbook. And you just talk to it. You upload other research documents. It'll learn from that. So we could have given it some of the great Saga research about what a good tutor looks like. You could give it what bad tutoring looks like. So Amplify has been very big on like why Migo is like terrible. But you could have agents, the web scraping. You could have agents web scrape what bad tutoring looks like, put that in as a learning set, and then it would learn from there. So, but again, that is all just me giving it a direction, and then agents thinking, reasoning, and building sort of on the back end. Where this gets really powerful is when you have multiple agents working on a problem in a different way. So this is a paper that came out from Google about a year ago called a co-scientist. What you see is that each of the buckets over here are different agents that essentially have different roles, access to different data sets, and participate in this sort of loop, almost like we would in a business meeting. Like if these were all people, and you brought them into this conference room, you'd have a loop where everyone would go around and say what they think or believe or hypothesis. There'd be a ranking of that. So all of a sudden now you can have agents that are collaborating with one another and debating one another. And again, if you give them a lot of time to do that, then usually magic happens on the other side. This is, in some cases, in this case, it found a potential treatment for one disease. But you can imagine this in education. Like imagine a set of agents that were working from different perspectives to help a student accelerate, a productive learning agent. Maybe you have an HQIM agent, a curriculum agent. So instead of asking one agent to do all these different things, you're specializing. And what this ends up looking like is almost like an in-person debate a little bit. I'll give you an example because Amy was asking about this last night. To teach myself Claude Code, my mom has been going through recurrence of her cancer. So I gave it Claude Code, this research paper, and then I gave it a very long prompt that I've been using with my mom. And I said, can we build this? And fast forward 30 days, we have something that I'm like called sort of Amara, for lack of a better term, that is an AI chatbot that you can talk to for cancer navigation. But at any given moment, when you have a hard question, you can send it to a care board. The care board looks like this. It's 18 specialist agents who have a debate, and then they see if they can get to consensus. And on the other side of the consensus, they print out the 3-page report. The actual debate is about 70 pages. And if you look at it, it's all using sources and citations, but it's also weighing trade-offs. Again, I have no idea about coding, but just like using some of these tools, all of a sudden you can build your own agentic debates in the space. AI, I think, works when it makes learning harder, not easier. A lot of people throw out this Turkey study that showed that when students use AI, their learning went down. What they miss is that the team actually changed the prompt, and once they changed the prompt, the negative assessment impact went away. That same team then went over and did another study just more recently and found that adaptive sequencing, it actually, the learning went up, and they got 6 to 9 months of additional schooling from it. The pattern is that when AI is used to not just give answers, but to orchestrate this productive conflict, productive struggle, good things tend to happen with it. But whenever you're looking at a study that is claiming to assess whether an AI has helped in education or not, you have to do a couple different things. You always have to look at the model. It's a huge difference now between using ChatGPT 5.4 or Opus 4.6 versus ChatGPT 3 or 4. The models are just better. And also you have to look at the prompts. If the prompt is just like, teach students this, that's a very bad prompt. The problem isn't the model. The problem is the prompt. And so good prompts right now should be a couple different dozen paragraphs long. Should be, thousands of words in some cases to kind of get the most out of it. AI can serve as a great TA for teachers. This comes from a Gallup survey, but teachers that are using it says it's going to save them time, on average 6 hours, doing a bunch of different tasks, different work. A couple risks that I worry about is like, it's not just cheating, it's this cognitive offloading. It's where people, whether it's teachers, but also students that are just getting the quick answer because they haven't exercised their cognitive muscles, they haven't actually learned something. Now, the thing about that is that this is not just unique to education. Like I see a lot of studies coming out about surgeons and doctors using this, the same sort of cognitive effects play out there. But also, if you think about it, this isn't unique to AI too. That if you think about like when a cabinet secretary comes in, when they write a speech, they don't write a speech. They have a speechwriter. They've outsourced that. They've given that, they've offloaded that cognitive work to a speechwriter. I was with, I won't say the cabinet member, but the other day, but there was a former cabinet member, and we were in this meeting room, and she just had a young staffer taking notes with her. And I was just like, okay, that's just sort of like granola or AI note generation, right? They like, she's not cognitively remembering the conversation. She is a human that's like just taking notes, making sure to follow up on the to-dos. So we cognitively offload all the different time. It just makes it easier to do this with AI. That introduces a lot of different risks too. AI companions, children well-being. This one has kept me up, I think, for easily 2 years. And it is because AI is so empathetic, or it mimics empathy, that people start developing very unhealthy attachments to it. And that is worse with kids, but it's not just kids. We see a lot of adults that go through AI psychosis. The labs aren't entirely sure why this is, and so it's hard to know how do you prevent it. But this is one to just sort of watch. I would say children's safety is the #1 policy issue in states right now, and so this is one to sort of track. Couple last slides, and then we can go to Q&A. One of the things we're also seeing as a pattern is the more someone uses AI, the less fearful they are of it. So this came from about a year ago. The Economic Innovation Group found the people most pessimistic about AI destroying jobs were those who used it the least. And this Walton survey keeps getting a lot of attention in the last 2 weeks because the macro headline was like, kids are more pessimistic and more fearful of AI. But that's not what it said. You have to look, and like people that used it daily as kids were more curious and more excited about it. Folks who never used it were more pessimistic and fearful of it. So I think this pattern of like the more you use it, the more familiar you get, the less sinister it seems, and the more you see it being used to help empower you in different parts of your work. Couple other lessons that are important for policy, but just schools too. Don't lead with the tech. We're in, I think, an underappreciated tech backlash right now. And so you're not just trying to put AI in schools, you're trying to use AI to solve something. So you have to be very specific about what you want to accomplish in teaching, learning, or operations. You have to have good definitions of what success looks like. These are leadership questions, not tech questions. But what I fear is that if you just put AI in sort of a broken system with broken workflows, you're going to get a broken response. And I think that this tech backlash, it'll fuel that even more. The bigger questions is like, imagine those capabilities that Dario was suggesting come out in, say, the next 3 years. The question for us is like, what does that mean for school operations? What does it mean when agents can do a bunch of different things for school operations or for the principal? What does it mean for teaching? What does it mean for learning? I keep wondering how many tech companies are at risk of getting displaced. Like you saw me build a tutor that took 20 minutes. Imagine I had $100,000, and imagine I had 6 months to really perfect a tutor that was essentially free. Like, who does that displace? If you watch all the Google announcements, they have all the building blocks for building a just-in-time, high-quality, interactive textbook. And so what does that mean for publishers? Like, I just think there's a lot of tech that gets displaced because all of a sudden teachers or students can just start building solutions for themselves. And then research, what if we are able to just do 10 or 100x different research? A lot of the work our bio team does at Chan Zuckerberg is just 100xing medical research and biological research. We should be able to do that in education as well. Okay, last 2 slides. First of all, everyone sort of worries that they're behind. What I want you to know is no one knows anything. And this is from Goldman Sachs. And what I love about this is like it's them trying to do a GDP scenario and look at the 2 lines. Like either it all goes, either we all have an extinction event or we have this abundance event. Like, which is like, thank you, Goldman. Like, that's such a wide range. That's not really helpful. But it just shows like, I think everyone's trying to have a hard time thinking about what this means and the models with it. And then lastly, capabilities are emerging that raises important questions. Did anyone see something big is happening on Twitter? Anyone read that 2 months ago? It is, how many? 86 million. Those of us that kind of work on the frontier labs, like we've been wrestling with this for a number of months and years. For whatever reason, this essay penetrated more of the public consciousness for it. I put a link to it so you can look at it later. Matt is like very well known in Silicon Valley. He just wrote an essay about how everything he knows has been changed and upended. And he had a number of great quotes, but he keeps saying, I know the next 2 to 5 years are going to be disorienting in most ways that people aren't prepared for. This is already happening in my world, and it's happening in yours too. And then he says, the whole point about this is you don't have to believe the claims of Dario. You don't have to necessarily believe what Matt is saying here, but it's worth wrestling with the fact that they believe it. And if they believe that, what does that mean? What does it mean for these capabilities? Who manages it? Who governs it? What does good and bad look like? How do you align these models? What happens when, again, people are making decisions based on an experience with ChatGPT 3.5? What is agents they need to be regulating and developing policy around? And how do we close that sort of gap between what Matt and Dario and others in Silicon Valley are experiencing and what all of our sort of wrestling as we think about this in education? So I'll pause there, and then we can go in a different direction.
Yeah, I'll kick it off with a question, and then we'll sort of open it up to others. But sort of shifting a little bit to the policy question about all this. First of all, it's an amazing presentation, frightening and exciting all at the same time, which I think is the whole idea. But from a policymaker point of view, and let's put it at the state level as opposed to the federal level. It seems to me there's sort of one of 3 stances you could take. One is to sort of encourage and support the adoption in some form or fashion. And then you could imagine a bunch of ways states could do that, either through resources or through sort of policy or guidance or technical assistance or what have you. Another would be to say, we're going to drop the hammer on this. This is terrible for our kids. It's sort of like cell phone bans. We're going to have AI bans, or we're going to slow it down, maybe the way to put it. And the other is just sort of, this is, over my head. I don't know what to do. I'll just stand aside. If you were to sort of define the just general positioning of state policymakers on this question, maybe there's another way of thinking about it, but which path would you recommend?
I'll say, like, state lawmakers are all wrestling with what this means and looks like right now. There's close to 1,500 bills that have been introduced. Most of them are around child safety, which is bigger than education, but plays into education. That's a little bit of the tailwinds coming out of cell phones and social media and wanting to get it right this time, I think, in their view. The solutions, though, the policy solutions are all fragmented, and some are good and some are not so good. Like one of the points we've made is that when there's a lot of age verification, which works when it's social media and websites, but when kids can download a free open source large language model on their desktop at home or their laptop or even their phone and build their own chatbot, that's like a very different, there's no age verification there, and it's not really sure who's liable. Like it just sort of breaks down. So I think the biggest problem is that they're really wrestling with what are the policy solutions. As it comes to education, I think it was states like what Amy led in Virginia, but it's too early to be too heavy-handed on this, including what to do, but it's just having schools wrestle with what does AI look like in their schools and acceptable use and not acceptable use, and letting them wrestle with their communities around it. They should be encouraged to pilot it, but I don't think encouraged to sort of mass adopt it. And also, I come dangerously close sometimes to saying we should maybe not have the large language models, the general ones, in schools, like without an education wrapper. Like, I think some of the mental health issues and some of the other things are concerning enough that just deploying that in a school setting without appropriate guardrails could be damaging. So, okay. Come right up to that one.
Mark, do you have a follow-up?
I'll jump in and try and articulate something. So you talked about the risks of cognitive offloading when in the context of tutoring or instruction applications of AI. And the reason that's a problem is it doesn't produce learning. The reason it's tempting is because effort is painful and we try to avoid it. So it leads me to think that there's going to be this dynamic where, kind of like Gresham's law in economics, like bad money drives out good. Like if the people are going to gravitate towards the applications that allow for cognitive offloading. So does that analysis make sense? And if so, what are the implications?
Yeah, I do hear from kids too that some of the kids that are doing it right, but their friends are doing it wrong, and their friends are getting A's, and they might be getting a B, and then it's the unfairness of that. Yeah, I mean, some of that is like how we deploy it and what the systems are designed for. Some of it though is like, and you saw that with the Google, it's like, you know, anyone could, like any kid could download one of those apps and just use it to short circuit and shortcut their lessons, their studies, or whatever they're working on. And so I don't know if we have great solutions on this entirely yet. It might change the way we'd have to do assessment. I'm seeing some schools saying they're having kids come in and do more oral presentations because that's something that it's harder to game and guess. It might change the way we do formative assessments to see if someone really understands something or if they just kind of completed something really fast. So, but I think this is going to be like one of the hardest problems that we have, the cheating and the cognitive offloading, because it's just so tempting. I also worry about this from teachers too, that, I mean, there's like teachers all of a sudden have an easy button, right? That they can generate a lesson plan and maybe it's good. And we assume in kind of like a hopeful sense that that means the teachers have more time to spend with their kids, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's like cognitive offloading, a lesson plan, and then it lets them go home sooner or earlier, just very human things. And but I think this is an area we're gonna have to like wrestle with in a bunch of different ways.
Well, I can tell a story. Last term, I taught a course which tried to benefit from your presentations over the years. And so I said, okay, we're going to have PowerPoint presentations in class, and they're going to have to describe. They were campaign managers, and they were supposed to plan a campaign for a senator or a governor or something like that, and they had to explain how they were going to do it, etc. Well, I thought I'd solve the problem because they had to stand up there and talk about it. But they tended to just put the PowerPoint up and read it to me. And I said to myself, well, that PowerPoint could have been written by anybody. So now I'm thinking I should ban the PowerPoint. They got to stand up there and they got to just talk. And the final exam should have to be an oral exam. And I don't have enough time to, 50 kids.
But you could use Claude to grade.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what's the solution? Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit, I mean, that's where some of the vision aspects of it, like you could have kids do an oral presentation to an AI agent that does assessment by listening, watching the student, and then that comes up to you, or there's just like a separate, but that's like, I think that could be one way to do it. I think it's going to be hard. Like it's interesting.
They're supposed to talk to a machine.
You could be in the
How's that going to appear in the Crimson? I just want to read the Crimson.
Call it Crimson. No, I don't know. It's like this is going to be, I think, a really hard. If every past wave of tech, you saw this happen. Wikipedia drew like a lot of concerns. Dartmouth like banned Wikipedia from inside of schools, their classes. So I think until we like figure out the right mix of human and also like where can tech help, there are some like AI detection tools. I'll be honest with you, like most of them can be gamed and aren't very good. And kids are getting very smart at how to evade that too by changing a couple words and making it. But I do think, like for the time being, these oral presentations are where I hear a lot of student teachers. I heard one other teacher too who used a very kind of, I thought, interesting a stoplight metaphor with her assignments. And green meant they could use AI as much as they want. Yellow meant they could use it, but they had to disclose how they used it. And then red meant they couldn't use it at all. And that felt introducing a little bit more nuance into the class, but I think it doesn't address Marty's point, which is there's a lot of kids that'll still use different types of tools to help short circuit on the red things and hope they don't get caught.
John, feel free to choose anyone you want.
Choose. Oh,
You're in charge.
Oh my gosh, this is all right. We'll go here.
Thank you very much. I'm from MIT. I'm a research fellow there. So I have a question about because like US, what you talk about is volunteer AI. It's quite top-down approach, impact education. But for example, in Singapore, we more like think about bottom-up, like think about all Singaporeans should be involved in the AI revolution. But the most challenge is about congregation level thinking. people, some of them, and they reject maybe use AI in the workflow. So that is very related to the Singapore Smart Nation strategy, the previous office levels decision making, how to involve those kind of like 90% of not expert, but the normal people involved in this kind of technology revolution. So from education part, so what you suggest about all this kind of change people's this mind?
No, it's a good question. I actually think most of the innovation is going to happen from the bottom up, not the top down. Like, it's the reason every time I do a Claude Code session, it's like people find all sorts of things that they want to build for their very bespoke needs. And from that surfaces the best practices that teams adopt and sort of grows from the ground up. I think we're seeing this in businesses too, that it's not the top down, everyone should use AI in this way, but it's a bunch of tiger teams with that have been exposed to the tools and have been coming up with different ways to use it. It's another reason why I think like Amy and Virginia got this right, because I think it's like we're too new and have too many uncertainties about how to like impose top down processes, frameworks, or standards. But if you get communities to wrestle with this, it's imperfect, but that's gonna be better than I think trying to like fast track a policy that meets for some kids or some schools, but not all the kids. And I worry that accelerates the backlash too. I think if parents feel like this is something that's being done to them and their kids, I think the backlash just gets worse there. Also, like the other problem I think we have right now is like people don't make distinctions between character AI and replica, like the AI chatbots that built for companionship, the large language models that are just general, and then like the education ones. Like the problem is like AI encompasses all these different things, and so we're owning a lot of the bad things that we would probably never let character AI or replica inside of a school, but that stokes a lot of the fears and concerns on it. Okay, we'll go here. We'll zigzag back and forth.
Okay, my question, it feels as if it comes from another planet. Okay, until a couple of years ago, I was the principal of a school in South Boston. Okay, in which almost none of the children had any kind of computer at home, except things that played games.
Yeah.
Okay. And the school is inside the old colony housing project. So it has an endless supply of children, Americans, who enter at the age of 5 and who have a mother who is 20. Okay. And it's inside a public housing project, which will be there 20 years from now because there's hot water and there's showers. Okay. We struggled a lot with the world that you talk about, where my friends here at Harvard, many of them live in that world. And then 5 days a week, I'd go to this other world, which is a few miles away. Is there anything imaginable about how those kids, I mean, I was in charge of the kids. I had good relationships with the teachers. I had good relationships with the school board. I had good relationships, right? But I didn't have any, have money to hire 4 more staff members who aren't, right? Are there any places where kids who live in public housing in a place like the city of Boston, there's any pathway into what for you is just the the time we live in?
Yeah, do they get left behind, or are they brought along, or are they accelerated? Is that the question?
They're completely left behind.
Yeah.
Okay. Except that it happened, I went to the ed school here. So I had personal friends who were interested in what I was doing, right? But that's hardly policy, and that's...
I would say there's a lot of concerns about this, not just from a kid standpoint, but from a society standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Do people that are on the front edge of this adoption curve, do they get these amazing catalytic exponential gains that leads people further and further behind? And they worry about that economically. There's a lot of concern about that from a policy standpoint about, we're trusting 3 frontier labs that are using AI to get their systems better. And it's, that's an immense amount of power that's being concentrated in 3, maybe 4 companies. And it is that, that brings in other questions into it too. And I don't know the answer on this one. Like I do see like this world where you're going to have a whole group of people using a whole bunch of agents that give them immense amount of capabilities and economic power and success. And then a lot of people who are stuck behind because they just haven't played with it, or they don't know how to use it, or they don't know how to prompt it, or they don't know like the right things to do with it. We've seen some research coming out of Anthropic that higher educated people use these tools for more sophisticated uses and also write more sophisticated prompts. So in a weird way, this plays out our 3rd grade reading crisis. That if you're not reading by the 3rd grade, you're not just falling behind in literacy. You're most likely not going to be able to unlock the power of these systems because you can't write, since writing is thinking, and you can't necessarily articulate all the different things you want and the outcomes for it. So I do worry about that. On the other hand, I think this is going to be, it could be, with the right sort of policies and supports and training in place, an immense way of leveling up and raising that floor. And I see this in some other work. The best example I can give on this is, it's not an education one, but there's, on the venture side of the work that I do, we had this one founder. She was a mom of 6, 4 adopted. She's 40 years old, fostered 43 kids. And seeing how broken the welfare system was, she had wanted to start a telehealth company. And a telehealth company, as a 40-year-old where you're the primary breadwinner for your family, is like a really big risk. And she's not going to take 2 years out of her career to go get an MBA. So where do you go? Like, how do you get the confidence and the skills and the knowledge to start a company? And so I built her like a little startup advisor, and she just started using it. And she's closed a $3 million pre-seed round. She's serving kids in 3 states. And it was all because she had essentially a tutor. She had a very patient tutor that she could ask questions to at 2 a.m., including, am I stupid for doing this? To everything, explain a safe, explain a term sheet, how should I? Like, her questions got more sophisticated over time, but she also developed more confidence, and that confidence has led her to become an entrepreneur. And I just wonder if like there's ways to sort of tap the hidden Einsteins that are in our communities, and those communities that just have never been given a chance. If they're given the right sort of tools, right set of agents, maybe there is a chance to unlock that genius. But I mean, I think it's going to require a lot of supports and a lot of policies and a lot of other, training a little bit more than this AI literacy stuff that we're seeing.
Well,
I could be wrong, but
Let's keep moving around so we get other people in the conversation.
yeah, there we go.
Thanks for talking to us today, John. It was really insightful conversation and presentation. My name is Rohit. I'm a 2nd-year MPP student here at the Kennedy School. I'm curious, more on the international side of things, have you seen any really cool or promising governance strategies in other countries that you think have promise for maybe replication either at the state or the federal level here?
UK does better safety reviews than we do here, including on some stuff on children. Then they have an AI Safety and Security Institute that's better. Most people in Washington, D.C. on the left and right think the EU's regulatory framework around AI is way too restrictive. And that's part of the reason you're not seeing new models coming out of there, but also diffusion and use of these is just really slow. So I think everyone's racing to not be Europe as it relates to a lot of the regulatory approaches. But no, I haven't. China is like very leaning in. They want a much more sort of pro AI use in their school systems. How that looks in practice, I think is yet to be determined. I also don't think that's like what we should replicate. So I haven't seen anything else really. I think that's why that slide about nobody knows anything is like everyone's wrestling with this in sort of like real time. And it's not like one country's figured this out and another hasn't. And even if a country's figured it out, it gets outdated because of where the models and capabilities are going. All right.
Hi, my name is Brittany Mangini. Thank you for being here. I'm a Kennedy School student, MC, MPA. And when I graduate, I'm going back to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I'm going to have an opportunity to influence some of the policy conversations that we're talking about here. And my question very specifically to you is similar to my friend over here who just asked. Within the states, you mentioned there's 1,500 bills out there, right? related to child safety and what you were talking about when you said with the right training and vision, et cetera, this can be used to level the playing field. I'm curious where I should be looking for thought leaders and best practices from your point of view on those two topics.
On the children well-being one, there's so many right now. And it's interesting, they're all in very bespoke communities. So there's a whole group on the education side, like Julia Freeland Fisher, who's with the Christensen Institute, focuses a lot on the AI and the intersection of social connection. Michelle Culver's at the Rhythm Project. She's like focusing on AI and social companions. They all speak with a very heavy education accent. You go over into the mental health space, and there's a couple different groups. The Child Mind Institute in New York is doing some good work. Lisa Demore. Lisa was a consultant for Inside Out too. Remember Joy, the emotion? So that was Lisa. And Lisa does exist, but she's been spending a lot of time thinking about this as a clinician, but also like what it means for policies and systems. Common Sense Media is like wading into this space. I think we're all waiting to kind of see like what that effort looks like, but they're going to be weighing in. There's a great program at Stanford called the AI Brainstorm. It's led by Nina Vassan, and she's been working a lot with the models to assess on student mental well-being and student well-being. She's very good. I'm trying to think who else I've missed on that.
And what about, sorry to interrupt, but state legislatures or anyone that you've, in your conversation, you're like, or even at the state agency level?
Yeah, I mean, the one state and the one bill that is getting a lot of attention in AI circles that was passed last year was Senate Bill 53 in California that required transparency on the models, and there's some mental health well-being and children's well-being as part of that. What the RAISE Act in New York has some echoes of that, and then there was a bill that was just passed in Virginia last week that also is getting some acclamation. But what is good about those bills is the regulatory framework forces the models, the labs, and even companies to be transparent with what the capabilities of the models are, but also the risks and how they're mitigating the risks. And it stops short of setting bench lines because transparency is good. We want them to share where the models are strong and where they're weak. But those three bills are probably on the children's safety. It's everyone's rushing to age verification, parent consent. It's very much a social media playbook, and there's probably part of that is important, but also I think it misses how this technology is going to show up in places that misses. Like again, anyone on their phone right now could download a free version of Google called Gemma and build your own chatbot. And so like it's not clear how a lot of those would like sort of play out there. I'm trying to think of other groups, but those are the main ones.
I did build an agent called Crimson last semester.
Did you really?
So I really did. Yeah, when you said that.
5 stars. Yeah. By the way, like we didn't talk about this, but AI is amazing for writing regulations and legislation. Like I think we're underappreciating that, and we're also overappreciating how bad so many regulations and legislative text actually is in the states. But like, I'll give an example. I won't say the senator's name, but he was working on an immigration bill, and it came right after the Chevron case. And so I gave Claude the Chevron case. I said, read the whole case, read the decision. And then I gave the draft legislation. I said, where are we vulnerable for executive authority to regulate? And it identified 5 sections. And then I said, well, how would you fix it? And then it wrote like a whole section. And I gave it to the ledge director, and they used it with a couple tweaks. But the ledge director said it saved them probably 2 weeks. And it did some more elegant ways of regulation than we would have thought. Yeah. Yeah, it's really good at that. Also, parent communications, like I think we're even if AI never touches a student, like we should just be leaning into what it means for parent communications. I was working with a bunch of state Medicaid directors. There's an amazing agent company, agenta company called Hippocratic AI that has voice agents that will call patients for intake and outtake. They've moved that into a whole bunch of other areas, including like cancer screening and things like that. But for all these states that are working for Medicaid beneficiaries for the re-enrollment, they're all focused on how to make their websites better and easier. But for most low-income Americans, they're not going to come to the website. Now all of a sudden you have an agent that sounds so human-like. It can literally stay on with a Medicaid beneficiary for an hour, working with them, talking through things, and also collecting information and filling out the forms for them. But most states have never thought about that. Like, well, how do you use a voice agent to do? And I think about this with the tax scholarships is all this sort of parent communication and outreach that should be, totally transformed as a result of some of these tools. All right.
Hey, John. Jim Flanagan, Executive Director of a group called Meta. We had the name first. I don't think we're going to win that one. Here in Massachusetts, say we're the Beta Meta. But we represent ed tech directors in K-12, independent public schools. Great. So this is top of mind for them every day. Thank you again. So I wanted to ask you about pedagogical debt, right? That some say AI is exposing. And we've really never designed instruction based on the science of learning. Mm-hmm. How can we catch up on that so that we infuse AI to do that? Or are we just going to put this on top of instructional slop? And a quick follow-up, how do you feel about being asked if you're a visual learner in the prompt?
That's interesting. On the learning sciences side, you know, it's interesting. Google's tried to crack this code. They have a model called LearnLM that was trained. It was like an early version of Gemini, trained on a whole bunch of learning sciences. Google was going back and forth as to whether or not they release it. There's so many models right now. Like, I think that's the other thing. We all think about what model we go to on the web. Yeah. But if you're building an application like the cancer care navigation, I think I have 5 LLMs on the back side of that. And every single day where there's a new LLM, you just go to your agent and you say, where does this fit in our tech stack? And you can go back and forth. And there's a whole bunch of very bespoke models that are coming out that are skillful in like one area. So like vision or speaking or medical understanding. There's MedGemma from Google. And so they were thinking about this LearnLM. What they realized is so many people are coming to Gemini to learn that were outside of the education system. They've just embedded that inside of it. And so Gemini hypothetically should get better with each new release as it relates to some of the learning sciences work. So that's one model. The other is that, and a thing I've been trying to push is that the way these AI labs like get their models to perform is by trying to outcompete each other in the benchmarks. Remember that one slide I showed that showed like random guessing versus human reasoning? That was like a diamond math benchmark. We don't have any good benchmarks in education. Like, we don't have a good benchmark for productive struggle. We don't have a good benchmark for tutoring. And so we can't run the models. This creates 2 problems. We can't run the models through them to see, well, is Gemini better than Claude or is Claude better than ChatGPT? But second, it gives no goalposts for the AI engineers to like build and enhance their models towards. And so I think Gates and a few others are trying to help build out those data sets and those evals. Chan Zuckerberg Initiative is trying to build some of that too, but we're going to need more of those to get the models sort of fine-tuned and aligned around it. I think the question a lot of us have now is like this agentic world, and you saw that on the, if I could throw out the Google co-scientist slide again, there's what we're learning is like when a team of agents working on a problem, it's good to have like sort of a critic, and it's the most annoying human being in a room for a meeting, but it's good to have someone who's like challenging the output of the other agents. And I think there's a group of us that think that is going to be part of the way we get better learning sciences too. You could have a learning sciences agent that is just looking at the output of the others and critiquing it. They call that LLM as a judge. But like if you build that in, and again, give it time, they hypothetically the agents will work itself out and get better aligned towards a learning outcome. But we have to build that kind of learning sciences. If I was in philanthropy, I would take ed reports and I would convert ed reports to an agent. So like every content that's ever produced coming out of Google, ChatGPT, or others, like was aligned to ed reports quality, make ed reports LLM as a judge to help guide the output of it.
Yeah, and I just asked about the visual learner because of the, whether it's right or wrong, right? The argument of, is that a neuromyth, like left brain or right brain? And is it appropriate to prompt that?
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting because there's an effort right now to try to create an education LLM that is like, it's sort of the MedGemma, but for education. And this was my pushback to them. It's like they have to make decisions on not just learning sciences, but on things like that. Are you a visual learner? They have to make decisions. Think about the math wars in California right now. Like, when do you teach, you know, what's age appropriate for calculus or for algebra? You think about the science of reading, like you have to make a lot of value decisions if you're going in and building one of these models. And what I worry about that politicizes this like Common Core pretty quickly. All of a sudden you have like, you know, the science of reading, very high quality LLM, and then you have something that's like weaker and more, you know, seen as more woke or more DI. It's like, it just invites politics in the mix that I think isn't helpful right now.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael, are there any questions or comments on the chat? I bet there are a lot. So you pick one.
This is one on the equity gap. You mentioned AI risks widening the gap between well-resourced and under-resourced schools, but you also showed that a capable tutor can be built in 20 minutes with a vague prompt and no coding knowledge. Do those two things contradict each other, or is the real equity gap shifting from access to tools to access to people who know how to prompt and deploy them effectively?
Yeah, I fall a little bit more on people into thinking how to prompt on these, but I wonder if that will go away over time. But even adults, like I think a lot of adults, I have some colleagues at AI who are very down on AI, and it's because their prompts are so rudimentary. Or just like if you think about like they're not anchoring it. Like again, you could give. I just gave it Andy's paper, but imagine you gave it a whole corpus of what you think is good tutoring and just let it learn. But most people don't think that way. They still treat it as like a Google search engine. And I think like you have to get out of that. So that's why I come back to it's a lot of training. It's why I do think like writing is as important as STEM. And that's a good way, because the only way you get these prompts to work is if you think clearly and articulate what you want and what good is, what you don't want. The constraints tend to be very important in this space. But like I said, like most of my prompts now are probably 100 lines easily, but that's not the way most people are doing it. So I do think it's a capacity issue in terms of how we're training or not training people. I wonder if that goes away though. Think about what it took to build a website in 1999. Like you had to do coding and HTML, and you had to like build all the stuff. And now like everyone's got a Substack. Who's got a Substack here? Like everyone's got a Substack. It's like, it's just made easy to publish. And I think we're going to see probably over the next year, a lot of ways to like build and prompt agents that don't require as much prompting. It's a hunch, but I think that's part of the trajectory. All right, Mark.
You made a comment in passing that I wanted to ask you to elaborate on. Why is Conmigo so bad? And what's the lesson from that?
I don't think it's bad. I think it's very polarizing. Like there are people in our field that just love to, beat up on Conmigo, and I think there's like a couple different things. Like it very much is emblematic of Sal Khan's way of how he thinks about teaching. They were using kind of a very early version of the tech, and so. I think there's a lot of lessons learned that came out of that. I just think if you had to build a Conmigo from scratch again, like there's a lot of lessons learned that you would probably just do it differently, because you have different models. You have agents now. You could do more multimodal. So I think that's worked well for a bunch of kids. I don't think it's worked well for all kids. It still requires a lot of student agency, like to show up and use it. And, it doesn't matter how good, but also that's true with a human tutor too. Like if the kid's not showing up, doesn't matter if it's a human tutor or an agentic tutor, it's still not, going to deliver the benefits there. But for some reason, he's become like a little bit of a villain, and especially in sort of the math realm. And I'll never fully understand that entirely. But.
Yes. Every year we do a conference. You spoke one year on which is really to the homeschooling community, and people coming up with alternatives, micro schools. And something you said here suggests to me that the tools are there for this to take off, because they have a huge problem with establishing a business. They have a huge problem figuring out, okay, what materials to use and so forth. But with the tools you're describing, the costs of learning that for that provider, the small little provider, are
going down to zero. Yeah, and also just how to I totally agree. Like I think homeschools, micro school movements, this just gives them such immense power to be able to help build the tools or the resources that they need for their particular program, or for companies to help, build something to serve like a number of kids. So yeah, I think it's underappreciated. I think it's underappreciated too, how this could be an amazing parent navigator. Like, I think I've been disappointed that the choice movement hasn't leaned into AI more for helping parents understand their eligibility and selecting things. Like that's low-hanging fruit that a simple chatbot could do, and do it in multiple languages and like essentially for free. It is very different than I think it was like Arizona, like parents were navigating spreadsheets and like an 80-page PDF, and we asked them to be a PhDs just to try to get a scholarship. We should be able to make that far, far easier. Yeah, I do think if you had asked me 6 months ago, this notion could homeschoolers build their own curriculum and their own tools, I would have probably said probably not. This Claude Code experience, I think, for not just me, but for Matt Schumer and for so many others, has just totally changed what you think you can do. And I built a ledge tracker to track the 1,500 bills. This does the web scraping, but you just ask it to go, and it uses a couple of open source systems. But now I have my own legislative tracker and not paying 10,000, 20,000 a month for that for multi-state or something. Or they're probably watching this. I'm sorry. Yeah. But so I just think about what else could a homeschool parent do, especially if the tools get easier. I think this is one of the jaggedness of this is these AI people build tools for themselves. And so that's why you get these tools named Codex and Claude Code, because they're building coding tools for themselves. They're not building it for a homeschooler. But I guarantee if they called it Claude Builder, all of a sudden now you're building for yourself. And but it's a mind shift a little bit. So we need the companies to make this a lot easier. It's my hunch. Does that make sense?
I wonder if you could comment on how all of this affects or should affect the sort of larger architecture of standards, assessments, and accountability in state education policy or national education policy. I mean, just an example, here in Massachusetts, we have an MCAS exam. It used to be a graduation requirement that voters, voted against using it in that way. And now there's work to figure out, okay, well, what should replace it? And there's conversation around what kind of assessment should be used, but not a further conversation around sort of, do we need to revisit our standards? Do we need to sort of start with a blank sheet of paper and do it all over again? Is there a way, do you think, to improve or adapt the existing architecture to this new reality, or do we really need to rethink from the jump?
I don't know if there'll be some people who AI changes everything, and you don't it should be totally changed. I'm not sure that's the case. Again, I weirdly feel ELA is more important now in an agentic world or an AI world than ever before. And so some of this is doubling down. I wonder if this smooths out some of the rough edges. You just think about a teacher looking at all the complexity of the standards and trying to figure out some plans around that. And now all of a sudden you could have tools that just simplify that and make it better aligned or more high quality. So maybe there's a way that smooths out standards implementation. We should be getting better at test item development. It's not quite there yet, but I think that's probably 2 years away, where the cost to develop test items using certain AI tools should come way down, and not need as many humans developing and testing it and refining it. So yeah, I think standards are more important than ever before. There's a lot of people at AI who are this changes everything, and it's the 21st century skills movement, or we should be teaching critical thinking and communications, and some of that is true, but the fundamentals are probably more important than ever before.
Michael, anybody else? Yeah. Okay.
One more question. I just wondering, I follow your question. I think it's a great question. I mean, if there will be make the education AI benchmark it, so what do you think is the most important?
On the benchmarks?
Yeah, benchmark.
Benchmarks are benchmarks are a couple different things. Benchmarks measure capabilities of AI models or AI systems, and so the new benchmarks that are emerging represent different tasks within businesses or the economy. There's a lot of healthcare benchmarks that aren't. Did it get the was it right in terms of explaining something medically? But the clinical diagnosis, clinical diagnosing, is that's an action and a task. So there's new benchmarks that measure that tasks, and so I think we need to think about all the different facets of learning and teaching that are tasks. Then how do you build the benchmarks that then let us know? Well, Gemini is better at productive struggle than ChatGPT, or none of them are very good at it, or
I mean, the new benchmark for the education with AI politics.
Over politics?
Yeah, politics or governments benchmark it. Which for education system could be, benchmarking itself for school, for, teacher, for, what kind of the priority of this kind of the education with AI tools. So if this new benchmark it, consider government benchmark it.
Yeah.
Politics benchmark it.
Yeah. I think there are some people who want governments to do benchmarking. I think I'm a little hesitant on that because I don't think governments have the expertise necessarily to know how to do the benchmarking. I know Common Sense Media, I think, wants to do some sort of like evaluations, kind of the way they have. I think there's a lot of questions of like, can they keep up? Like, you just think how fast models keep updating. Every single time the model updates, do you run another benchmark? Do you run another analysis? And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a mix, but I would be hesitant on having governments like benchmark and indexes. I do worry.
I've been saving a question for the end, and my final question is: can we feed the prosecution's case against this person for whatever crime they committed, and the defense attorney's case, and then just skip with the jury?
It's like a Minority Report type of thing.
No. The machine is going to Claude or whoever is going to decide. I want to say, is this person guilty or not?
Based on what the case we give to the, you want the AI to make a
Each
decision?
side gets to present their case, and Claude says guilty.
I would not be comfortable with that. But it's interesting. Sam Altman talks a lot about this, and there's a little bit. We were just talking about before about cognitive offloading. There's a little bit of like there's a great essay that came out last year called Gradual Displacement, and it's where we start handing decisions over to AI because it gets the less consequential decisions right. And obviously you just start treating it as like, well, it was right for that. Maybe it'll be accurate for this. And then we very gradually, as individuals in a society, start trusting the AI over humans. And so
execute them.
Okay, well, that's a dark path. Oh my gosh, we should get you a therapist. You're on the existential line, writing it down. But like Eric Schmidt has talked about this. Sam Altman has talked about it too. Like they get very worried of what happens when we just start outsourcing our decisions because AI has always been right. So maybe it'll be right about that. Maybe it's right about this medical diagnosis. Maybe it's right about that medical treatment. And we don't know why. There's also a very weird world we're entering. I was telling Amy about this. There's a great study that came out about a year ago in Nature that looked at retina scans. And retina scans you can use to predict certain types of eye disease. They connected it with a whole bunch of patients' EMRs. And all of a sudden, when the AI analyzed the data, they found the retina scans could predict Parkinson's, heart disease, and a few other conditions. The creepy part about it is it couldn't explain why. That there is some sort of microscopic, very small, undetectable to the human eye pattern the AI saw that we didn't see. But that's, a very weird world where all of a sudden something is getting so smart and so good, but can't explain to us because we're not smart enough or there's just not, it's transcending. And that I see a lot more happening in the bio and healthcare worlds that I don't think we'll get to the point where we'll just turn it over for legal judges or other things. But it's a huge tension in hospitals right now, actually, because there's some clinical guidance systems that a doctor would say, I think we need to do this, and their internal healthcare system in the hospital says no, like AI says we should do this. And that's like creating a lot of tension. But I don't think we should be like replacing people on those things. We should hopefully be empowering them.
So John, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
What a time to be alive. Yeah. I hope this is helpful. It's like, I hope you feel like I have a lot of existential risk on this stuff, but I also have a lot of optimism. And I think it's like, it's going to actually be up to us as a society and leaders shaping it to get the outcome. I think I hear way too many rooms where people are like just thinking it's passive. It's just happening to us. And I think we could shape it, direct it, and use it to sort of maximize human potential. So I'm more excited today. Yeah.
Thank you very much, John.
It's dark places, Paul.